Hello and welcome back to Tovi. In this tutorial, we're going to cover the merging tool, which is also can be considered the gap filling for the meteorological variables. Now we're going to go up here into our toolbox and again select the merge variables. Now when we enter the screen, we see a list of variables along the top. Now these variables are from the data set that we brought in, and each of these variables that are listed have a redundant or a replicate variable in the data set, or are considered a driver that's necessary for later doing flux gap filling. So I can come in here, for example, and select on air temperature. Now when I come over here to my primary variable, I have a couple choices that were inside the data set. I have my biomet air temperature and the air temperature recorded by the gas analyzer system. I'll go ahead and select that one to work with. This next setting over here is the number of windows that I want to operate within my data set. In this particular case, I only have 1 month. I'm working from July of 2013. This third setting over here is the amount of data I want to have overlapped between my existing data set and the data set that I would like to merge with. I can set this to any number that I feel comfortable with. Right now it's set to default of 50, and we'll explain a little bit more how that works. Now air temperature in this case has a coverage value of about a little over 74% for this month, and none of it is filled yet. When I come down here, I have an empty table. Eventually I'm going to add variables into this table that will be used for gap filling this particular variable, air temperature. The second table down here illustrates the variables that are available for merging in and gap filling my air temperature. So for example, we have our biomet air temperature, and then you'll notice we have air temperature from the ISD weather station and air temperature from 2 EARI weather station grids. Now we brought that data in back at the beginning of the project, and so that's the main purpose for doing that. Again, we want to fill in as much of our meteorological variables as we can, because those are the important drivers for later doing our flux gap filling. So if I want to look at my air temperature here, what we'll notice here is a couple things. First, our overlap is here, so all of this is above our 50% threshold. So any of these will work for gap filling. Now if I had a minimum overlap of 75% required, then these would be inadequate. So let's go ahead and look at some other things. There's several fit types that are listed here, and so we are taking the weather station data or this biomet data and fitting it to the air temperature, our primary variable. And an R-squared value, the slope and intercept are calculated, so there's a relationship developed between these two. So I can take a look and plot these over here on the right, and here I'll go ahead and bring up also the weather station data. Now this one, if you remember, is from the airport that's nearby the site. Down here we see a graph showing a correlation between the two, and also a diurnal ensemble. This lets us look at to see if there's perhaps some lag between the two data sets, or if there's some strange features that we want to perhaps avoid using. So in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and use my biomet air temperature to fill these gaps. It does have basically a perfect relationship between the two, and that makes sense because this air temperature measurement is actually measured on the eddy covariance station. Now to add this up, I simply click this up button, and what you can see here now is all these red points have been filled in to my air temperature for this month. If I go back and look over here, and you see the coverage percentage and the filled percentage, and add these up, they will come to 100% in this case. Now over here, you'll see two other available checkboxes. Now let's assume I have a year or maybe longer of data, and instead of going month by month and adding up this variable, I can simply click this box and have it applied to all my time periods in my data set. Alternatively, I can go through month by month, and maybe one month I want to have this air temperature, and then the next month I might want to use the weather station. So that's up for you to decide as you do this. Now the autocomplete feature is for when you have data in your air temperature, for example, that might be less than this overlap required, say 50%. So for example, if I only had 30% of my air temperature available, the gap filling will not happen during this month because I'm not meeting that requirement of a 50% overlap. If I click autocomplete, what will happen is then it will start going outside this 1 month time window. So for example, if I had a year of data and I'm in July, it would start going into June and into August until it reaches a 50% overlap of variables, builds that regression, and then we'll fill in the gap like that. So that's what these two features are for. Okay, let's do one more. Let's go up over here to our VPD. VPD is coming in from the eddy covariance system. There isn't a specific biomet measurement for VPD, so there's not another alternative there. But we do have some VPD from the ERAI datasets. Again, VPD is a key driver for the flux gap filling, and so it's important to try and fill those gaps in. So when the gap filling algorithms run and code, that variable can be used in the computations. So here, for example, I can again show these plots of the two and decide which one I want to use to fill the gap. So this one has, looks like the better fit and the better correlation. I will add that. Now another thing I want to mention here is, let's assume in this case that there was not enough data in the VPD from the weather station, and there's a small gap in this data set too. What I can do now is add a secondary VPD measurement up here. So what the software and the algorithm will do is it will first try to fill any gaps with this with this first variable in this table, and if there's still gaps remaining, it'll drop down and start using data from this second one. And so for example, in the air temperature one, we had 4 different variables that we could have loaded up into this top table, where it'll drop down and continue filling until it can use all the data that is available for you. So after I've gone through all these variables, I go ahead and click on this Done Merging button. I'm prompted to type in some kind of tag. Again, I can type what I want. Maybe for this particular example, I can say I merged air temperature and VPD. And with that, we hit continue, and that merging takes place. And when we land here back on our overview page, you can see we have a new node up here. Lets us know what we did, that we merged TA and VPD. So that's where we are in our workflow history. And here in our water group, you can see now we have one of the variables continuous all the way through. That would indicate the VPD. Similarly, we have one of the variables going all the way through now for meteorology because we merged the air temperature. And that'll wrap up this particular tutorial.